Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Essentially Wrestling with me, Ishan, and my co-host Sanket. Today is a special day for us. Not only is this the kickoff show for our brand new podcast, but we've got an even special guest here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, allow us you to introduce the former WWE Vice President of Global Digital and Integrated Sponsorship Sales and the current Vice President of Marketing Operations at GFuel, Rob Kligman.
Thank you for having me. That was the best intro. What WWE is known for is their intros and their songs behind their intros. So I appreciate it. It's my pleasure to be with you all. Honestly, I feel privileged to have this opportunity. Excited to speak on both behalves, GFuel as well as WWE. Both are cornerstones of their business and truly number one in their business. So excited to go a little bit more in depth and look forward to the questions and answers.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
speaking of GFuel, I think there's a lot that Sanket has to uncover there. So I'm going to throw it right to him, where we ride through the GFuel because that's what you're doing right now. And then we'll dive deep into WWE as this chat progresses.
That sounds great.
So, as you know, you've been at GFuel for almost a year now after the whole WWE experience. So let's start with that. How is it? How has the journey been so far at GFuel since you joined and took over as Vice President of Marketing Operations?
It's been a great ride. So backtracking a little bit, which is interesting, we're talking about the present, but the past also has to do with the present. So when I was at WWE, I approached GFuel because they were the leading energy drink for esports. And I saw they had a great opportunity and a stranglehold on such a great vertical being gaming and sports. Understanding that a lot of our superstars and wrestlers at WWE travel with their gaming operating systems, will take a Switch with them, are extremely involved in gaming. I saw there to be a very good synergy between the two. With that, I approached them and said, this is a great opportunity. Why not marry what WWE has to offer, which is our iconic superstars that resonate with so many fans, and why don't we put them on your shaker cups? The shaker cups were used to put the powder in, shake them up, and then drink. And this was an opportunity for GFuel that they hadn't thought of at that time for them to utilize intellectual property. In that manner, intellectual property was the likeness of Andre the Giant, of The Rock, of Stone Cold Steve Austin. That opportunity, The Undertaker as well. So it gave the consumer a proposition to not only buy a new shaker cup, but also buy a shaker cup with the icons that they've loved for years and years. So that was my first entry into GFuel. And it gave me the opportunity to really learn about their business. Over the course of my career, I was able to work deals with Xavier Woods, who, as I think many people know, is really inside of gaming. So that sort of cross area of gaming and wrestling is perfectly shown with a superstar like Xavier Woods. So we did some talent deals. We did some opportunities, and we'll get into that a little bit more depth around the Undertaker and Dr.Disrespect. So there was a lot of synergies that eventually brought me into GFuel. Long story short, I had the opportunity to speak with their president and some of their board of directors on some interesting concepts and ideas, put together a nice white paper of ways I think the influencer department could work, as well as where I see from a marketing perspective the company going. And from that point on, they offered me an opportunity. And after 8 long years at WWE, I thought, you know what, I hit my peak. I hit the pinnacle at WWE. And this was a great opportunity to sort of go on the client side and have an opportunity to reshape and continue shaping a great business moving forward.
That's quite a journey, I would say, because, to take those kind of fans and, that kind of interaction and then move to gaming, where first you incorporated and then now you're continuing your journey by, flipping the tables, I would say, in a way. So
Exactly.
Yeah. So moving on, I just want to keep the topic on GFuel for a little while. The portfolio is impressive. I think it's in terms of the streamers that you've signed. I think arguably it's one of the biggest portfolios that are there right now in terms of there's Ninja, there's PewDiePie, but one thing that intrigued me about Ninja is, how the deal really went down, because he was with Red Bull for quite a while. And, Red Bull is a huge sporting giant, not just gaming, but, Formula One, they have their own team and they do the most extreme stunts, So I just wanted to know, like, how Ninja got really, influenced by the GFuel strategy and, switch sides. This is the dojo for GFuel.
Yeah, it's a super question, but I don't know if you're aware, but Ninja was with GFuel before Red Bull.
Right. Yeah. So I think so he came back.
He came back. So we don't normally take from competitors and or others, but Ninja was such a great fit for us, and he was rebranding his look and image coming off of Red Bull. So it was a perfect timing to bring him back into our stable. And he is still probably one of the biggest that you would think about out there from a gaming perspective and also an entertainment perspective. So when you think about it, it's pretty hard, and synergies again with WWE in some ways, with superstars going into movies and entertainment. Ninja did a great job of being recognizable by the non-gamer also. So the more mainstream person. So what we saw was we started to develop an RTD, a ready to drink can, as many of you are aware. We went from the powder, which is still a great business for us, and now we've developed a ready to drink can, which is distributed across the world. And right now, the idea behind Ninja was we have a great opportunity to penetrate Walmart. So bringing in somebody who is as recognizable, both from a gaming perspective and non-gaming perspective, and place his specific exclusive ready-to-drink can inside of Walmart gave us a great selling opportunity. And we saw an opportunity to merge two worlds again, where we were able to have somebody that was recognizable because we were using his IP, his intellectual property, and his image on a can by both attracting the gamer and the non-gamer. And the idea here was it was a great selling proposition for Walmart because they were able to capture a much younger audience because of the understanding who Ninja was.
It's quite intriguing, yeah, because I think even around the time, the announcement also, you let him handle your Twitter handle for that time frame. Was that planned, or did he just come like, that's just...
It was planned in our conversations with him to have another opportunity to kind of come back. And we just signed also Sniper Wolf, and that's another great example. Sniper Wolf has about 34 million YouTube followers, and she continues to grow and has been around for years. But this is somebody who started out with us early on and saw the opportunity to come back to a brand that has matured. So just like our influencers like Ninja and Sniper Wolf mature and develop into bigger characters online, we also as a company have matured from a powder business and tub business, shaker type business, to obviously a ready to drink and in retail like Walmart, Target, and other convenience stores. So it's fun to see us reconnect with folks that wanted to be with us early on. There was a right stage for us to bring them back. And I think that's what you're going to see in the influencer world, the talent management world. It's not only about keeping people on roster for 5, 10, 15 years. It's they may be important to a brand at certain times in the year and or certain years. So for us, it was the right time to bring Ninja back because we had a ready to drink can and there was a meaning behind it. That's where we saw the opportunity. I think going forward from a talent perspective, you're not going to see so much of a continual contract basis where we just keep talent on forever. I think you'll bring them in maybe during the Christmas time or maybe during TwitchCon timeframe, and you'll start to spot them out as to areas that make sense for your business.
That's quite the plan actually for Ninja, because like you mentioned in terms of mainstream, he's appeared on the Tonight Show, he's appeared on Family Feud, and he's he even had the Ultimate Crown match, on Twitch with MrBeast. So those were quite a few involvements, while Ninja is on his path. Another one of your top stars is PewDiePie, who you had for a couple of years. So what is the expectation from GFuel towards him? Because on YouTube also, I think he's kind of slowed down for a bit now. He's got his dream move to Japan, of course. And, his streaming is kind of toned down a bit. Now he's doing more vlogs. So how does GFuel keep, continuing the partnership with him?
So PewDiePie is amazing. So right about now, he's got about 111 million followers on YouTube. He is the largest creator on YouTube at the current moment. And the interesting fact that I don't think a lot of people know, but PewDiePie called us. He called us when he had about 54 million followers. Yeah, he called our CEO and called him and said, I want to be part, I drink GFuel and I want to be part of GFuel. So that's pretty interesting to know. And then he's grown from about 54 million when he first started with us to about 111 million right now. So that's a great example of an influencer who just loved the brand, wanted to embrace the brand, and has always been with us. And it's interesting, you can tell immediately when PewDiePie is going to post something because you see the movement in sales because of his following. I think there's a big distinction between influencers who truly have a following that aspire to be like them and influencers that don't necessarily influence. And PewDiePie is someone that truly does have a following that aspires to be like him. So his natural ability that he likes our drink, he drinks our drink, honestly does unbelievable for us. So it's someone that we feel is going to be in our stable for some time because of that fact. And he's just a different breed and a person who's just amazing to work with. And that makes a difference.
It does, absolutely, because he is the biggest individual creator. And, you know, trying to keep PewDiePie in check, there's another YouTube creator who's rising up, kind of challenging him in the form of MrBeast. He's at 104 right now, like it's still ticking. And he's still really active on YouTube, pouring in millions of money, millions of dollars that he gets, you know, into producing content. So I just want to know if, you know, GFuel ever had a thought of bringing him also into the fold because of his rising popularity, or, you know?
Yeah, we definitely have. I think you would be remiss not to think about MrBeast because he is so big. He does such amazing collaborations across all platforms. I think there's an opportunity one day to work with him from a philanthropic perspective because he does so much. And I think we just need to figure out what is the best way to marry the two together. But I think he would be a perfect complement to our roster at some point down the road. But everybody has to be thinking about MrBeast or you're not really sitting in the industry.
Exactly, because he's got a lot of, like, you know, philanthropic movements. He has his own gaming channel. He's virtually tried to put his name into almost every, you know, category on YouTube. I don't know what's left, but pretty sure he'll educate us on what is left. So,
and that's the important part also that you mentioned. It's trying to find the time to get a chance to work with him because he is so busy.
Exactly. Yes, that's true. And you know, even in terms of GFuel, like, he adored PewDiePie and he had the feud with Ninja at Ultimate Crown. So in a way, you have a foot in the door, I would say, because he's interacted with your streamers. Yeah,
exactly. And we've also worked with some folks that are close to him. Mr. Matt Beam is somebody who builds larger than life YouTube objects, and we have him on roster right now. So there's a lot of tentacles that touch MrBeast that we're involved with. We just haven't gotten to the
man himself.
Exactly. But he is a busy person, so we hope that the conversations will continue and there'll be an opportunity down the road. But for now, we continue working with, we announced this week Sniper Wolf, which I think I mentioned earlier. Young Gravy did a great video for us this week as well. We have him on roster, and our idea is, well, one, we want to continue creating and being with those established creators, but we also want to find out who's up and coming and going into the superstar realm. So we try to keep an eye on that platform and those up and comers, as well as the ones that are already established.
Right. So alluding to that, you know, is there any streamer who you've the up and coming ones? Do you have like a particular name or something already in mind, or like, you know?
Let's just say we are consistently talking about the names that resonate with fan bases that follow GFuel and others that don't follow GFuel, in hopes that we bring on a whole new base of interested folks to purchase and start to really follow GFuel. But it's interesting because we are a business that has matured both retail and online. we think also in different pockets now. We're doing a activation with Mikal Bridges, who is a gamer, loves gaming, and he is a basketball player for the Phoenix Suns. So what we're doing with him, we're actually creating, and I think it's today, to be honest with you, at Circle K in Phoenix, Arizona, an activation where our fans can actually meet him, have a chance to shoot a basket over a standee that has his outstretched arms, win an Xbox, win a GFuel refrigerator, which is the coveted prize at GFuel, and really have an opportunity to, one, purchase our drink at Circle K, but also at the same time meet one of our influencers, in this case, Mikal Bridges. So we're not only just continuing to stay in the streaming world, but we're also looking for the casual gamer also. In this case, Mikal Bridges is that a great example. He's young, he's in that demographic, he's just a great guy in general, but he's also a gamer. So it fits all areas for us and hits a very great niche within the geographic area of Arizona. So we've worked with him very closely.
Absolutely. You know, of course, the casual gaming audience also growing. I mean, even during lockdown, you know, almost everyone was gaming. So it was pretty impressive, you know, like you suddenly saw, like you mentioned Mikal Bridges, but, you know, there are any other basketball players and across all sports really, you know, who are picking up a controller and going online and streaming and stuff. So, you know, it's pretty impressive. So the horizon's wide open, of course.
Yeah.
We
another one, just to walk into entertainment, we signed Matt Lintz, who is a actor and a very big gamer. Matt Lintz is somebody who was in The Walking Dead and in Miss Marvel. And Miss Marvel is interesting because if you've noticed, what we've done is we've really become the Funko Pop of energy drinks. And when I say that, we have partnerships with Disney and Marvel and Sony, and there's a lot of IPs that are now being affixed to our products that marry again and sort of have collaborations with entertainment folks, sports folks, and that's really brought in a whole new demographic and audience for us.
Absolutely. Switching gears now to, you know, arguably one of the biggest deals we have done, which is merge Dr.Disrespect and The Undertaker. You know, I just want to know like your thought process, because obviously you have this 6'8", really eccentric streamer, you know, among definitely, you know, in terms of like the average age of a streamer, he's pretty far beyond that, but he still draws an audience. You know, quite the figure. He has quite the reputation, and you merge him with arguably like the cornerstone of WWE, you know, the one true rock, like someone that Vince McMahon could always count on. He's been counting on him since the 90s and nearly 4 decades. So, you know, how is that thought process? Because sure, you got in touch with GFuel, but like why in particular like the 2-time?
So there was an opportunity in my career. I like to do things that are challenging, and I like to break through areas that have never been done. And I did that by taking an advertisement and putting it into storyline for GFuel through a Netflix partnership that I did. But in the case of The Undertaker, there was an opportunity here where The Undertaker was never taken really out of the ring. His persona is always The Undertaker. If you saw him on late night, or you saw him on a talk show, or outside of WWE, he was always The Undertaker. And it was always within that sort of persona. So this was an opportunity to do a talent deal, which Vince McMahon had mandated and asked us to go out and look for a partner that made a lot of sense for The Undertaker to do this for the first time. So I quickly identified GFuel as that partner. Why? Because gaming is a young 18 to 24-year-old demographic. GFuel is a leader in their industry. They had on roster at that point Dr.Disrespect, and they had him from the time he had 5,000 followers to who he became at that point in time. And there was an opportunity when I pitched and spoke to some of the folks at GFuel to bring both of The Undertaker's world and Dr.Disrespect's world together, which, to your point, different generations, different people, everything is different. But when you put it together, it builds a storyline. And what is WWE all about? A storyline. So we pitched a storyline of creating an episodic show that would occur over 5 to 7 days, where we would disrupt Dr.Disrespect's studio by doing subtle little things that would start to kind of seed through social media that something's happening but are we really sure what's happening? And by doing that, we would maybe change the colors to purple. So that's obviously Undertaker's colors. Maybe his symbol was there. We blew up Dr. Disrespect's Lambo, which he calls it, the Lamborghini. We did a lot of little things to kind of start it off. And then that last day, we had the opportunity to truly unveil this special interaction, which was obviously the Undertaker and Dr. Disrespect. And it was a huge hit across wrestling fans, gaming fans, and then bringing the two together. And this was, the idea here was hopefully get the foundation built that Dr. Disrespect could eventually find his way into WrestleMania or into WWE. When you take a step back, you look at Dr. Disrespect, and he is a character. He is exactly what the Undertaker is, just in a different mold. He's 6'7", he's got his mustache on, he's got his hair, he's got the glasses. His whole getup is WWE. So when we went to Vince McMahon and we pitched this idea, the idea was an easy greenlit opportunity because it just fit perfectly. So that opportunity was amazing. I had the chance to fly to San Diego to go to Dr. Disrespect's house, which is where we filmed it. We filmed it with a green screen, being his studio. And The Undertaker is amazing. He's in that league for 30, 35 years. The most iconic superstar on that stable in my mind. I was at the WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans where he lost for the first time at WrestleMania. And it was the most iconic experience I have ever been in because nobody expected him to ever lose a match at WrestleMania. So to be there, experience that, and then be able to take him out of the ring and marry him with something that is a cult hero in some ways with Dr. Disrespect was just a flooring experience. And I took some photos and happy to share those photos with you of just the experience. It was flooring.
That's absolutely great to hear, the Undertaker and Dr. Disrespect merging, that's something that you could never dream of, and it actually happened, which is really intriguing to me even today. And speaking of the Undertaker, like we've heard, and he said it himself, he's not too keen on guys in the roster having these games, and he's like, the locker room is not like the old times. So did he have any reservations before catching up with Dr. Disrespect?
So you're very right. I had the chance to actually sit with him the night before and have dinner. And he is as old school as you can get. He doesn't like social media. He doesn't like people. He likes to be himself. And he knew 15, 20 years ago, he couldn't do what he did then in today's world because people are snapping the photos. They're posting it on Snapchat, wherever they're doing it. So he is a definite old school soul, and rightfully so. And that's exactly his same mentality. He felt that same way. But with this opportunity, he thought it was an opportunity for him to grow a younger audience who could then relate to him a little bit differently. And that was really where he saw the idea, because as much as he's retired, his IP, his image is still going to live on. So his hope was, with this younger crowd that Dr. Disrespect had, and a great crowd, could they start to follow him a little further after this type of activation?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you also got in collaboration with Netflix. So is this the Escape the Undertaker movie that we're talking about here?
Yeah, no, but we did a couple partnerships. I did a partnership with The Rock in a movie that he released last year, which was great. And then we did one with Dave Bautista. As you are familiar with Dave Bautista, he did another Netflix movie last year, which we were able to put into storyline. There was a bunch of zombies that ended up coming into the ring, and it was something that we'd never done before.
WrestleMania Backlash, if I'm not wrong.
You're correct. Yeah. That was an iconic moment because storyline is coveted. Storyline doesn't get messed with because it's the writers that are putting it together. So when we took this idea that Netflix came with to present it to Vince McMahon, he loved it. One, I think zombies are always part of WWE in some fashion anyway, but the way that we were able to bring it forth and make it a lumberjack match, which fans like lumberjack matches, this became a pretty cool opportunity. So that's my relationship with Netflix. I was able to break through and bring that forth. And then that followed with a movie where Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot and The Rock starred at Q4. I want to say it was Q4. What was it?
Red Notice.
Correct. And we did it again with Red Notice. So that was, again, two examples, both The Undertaker, taking him out of the ring, but having the ability to get through storyline as an advertising salesperson is unheard of and never was done before. So this was done, and it was actually well liked by the fans. And that's the true part of greatness. If the fans believe it, because WWE fans, they see a shill and they see something that's forced and they'll call it out. But the fans really did like what we were able to pull forth. And I did it with two iconic people, Dave Bautista, I feel, as well as The Rock.
Absolutely. And speaking of The Rock, that entire egg storyline that happened at Survivor Series, Mr. McMahon is holding it. I was on the edge of my seat the entire night because I was hoping now The Rock comes out and, he confronts somebody because his egg is lost now.
Correct. So you could see, if you saw the movie, how we built it in. And then the idea of having Vince McMahon part of it just again exemplifies the fact that he loved what we were doing. And this was a first of its kind, never been done before.
Absolutely. Your experience at GFuel, where you work closely with, the head honchos, and you can, you have to talk to the board of directors. So how closely were you associated with Vince during your time in WWE?
So many people probably don't know this, but Vince McMahon had his pulse on every decision made at the company, and that included advertising and sponsorship. So when we had an opportunity, in that case, we'll use the Netflix example, we had to work with the writers. And that's interesting to say that, because most companies or most people think that you work with a marketing department to come up with that concept of the egg and or the zombies, but that's not true. We actually worked with the head writers of WWE storyline. So what a better way to create greatness within an activation than working with the people who do it day in and day out for the company. So anytime we had an opportunity of that stature, it had to go through Vince to get the approval first. And then once we got the approval, it was seeded down to the writing group, which we worked very closely with to integrate it into storyline, because you can't really mess up a storyline. That's what WWE is famous for. So to answer your question, Vince was very involved in all of what we did, and that included signage as well. If we wanted to put something on the ramp in some way, or we wanted to do a talent deal like the Undertaker deal, he had to sign off on it. And he's a visionary. So I compare him a lot to Steven Spielberg, or a major movie producer, because if you think about it, you think of Star Wars and you think of Han Solo or Luke Skywalker, you think of these iconic, or even Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you think of that. You think of these iconic stars that you reflect back on and you talk about. He was a visionary, because you and I are still talking about Hulk Hogan, The Undertaker, Stone Cold, the Animal, George Steele. Like, you think of these folks and you put a smile on your face, and that's the iconic part about what GFuel, what WWE was all about, because of Vince McMahon. So he is a visionary that when I was able to have a chance to be in the same room with, you sort of pinch yourself, because he's a creator of characters that will live on for years and years to come, that not many people can say they sat in a room with someone who had such great vision. Maybe a Steve Jobs, right, at Apple. He had the vision of creating the iPhone and other things that he did with Apple and computers. But Vince McMahon is on a level of his own. He created characters that our kids and our grandchildren and children after that will continue looking at, idolizing, buying their action figures, watching the cartoons, video games. So it was pretty amazing, to be honest with you, to have the opportunity to talk and be with him. And I luckily bonded with him very well. We worked out in the WWE gym very often. And
that's great. I don't think a lot of people get a chance to do that.
No, agreed. We had a state-of-the-art gymnasium, and I have a picture of that I'd happily share with you guys. And when Vince would come on those Saturday mornings with me and I'd see him, it was my best workouts ever, because he's as much a visionary and work addict as he is disciplined when it comes to working out. And you can see it with his body today, and his mind and body are just in perfect shape. And it was just an energizing opportunity for me to be in the same room and work out with him. I love working out, but the energy and the excitement behind working out with him in the same gym, which was usually only a couple people, myself, maybe Vince, and maybe one other person and his trainer. And I had the best workouts ever.
I can imagine how that would have been. I'm sure, like, like, oh, you're not doing it right. Just pull it harder. Something like that. Did you have any rage of Vince McMahon in the gym?
Well, I'll tell you this. He listens to AC/DC. So AC/DC, the music group, is always on inside the gym. And I'm a fan of AC/DC. I actually have a pinball machine after AC/DC. So when I heard that music go on, you want to work out, but you want to work out really hard. And you want to respect the discipline of working out. You want to do it correctly. You don't slam your weights. You actually do things in a manner of respect. And I think that's what Vince brought, was a respect level. When I had the opportunity to work out with him, it was awesome. And I think I was in my best shape of my life due to that fact, because you want to work out hard, you want to look good. And that's what kept me motivated.
Absolutely. And you're talking about working out. I think somebody gave this information to me that Vince actually, told you that you should consider becoming a WWE superstar or something.
Yeah. He at one point had talked about that, and but I don't know how many people he may say that to. All I know is I enjoyed working out with Vince, and you, just like when you go into a room in an office with him and you speak with him and you pitch him an idea, the same thing went true inside the gym. You just want to work hard. You want to be as good as you can be. And I oftentimes learned a lot about different maneuvers in the gym because of things he was doing. The best part I think I loved about it was he would travel, as you know, to Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view. He would go work out at one of those gyms on the road. If he liked that equipment, it was in our gym the next week. So it was a state-of-the-art gymnasium because Vince is very diehard about what he would work out with. And like I said, if the equipment was great, we would see it in our gym at headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut the next week.
That's one thing that a billionaire can definitely flex. Get it the next day. Come on, put it in.
Exactly. So there was no missing out on equipment opportunities inside that gym. And it was a pleasure to work out there. And like I said, it's motivation. I think you have to look at motivation when you go into work and when you go into a gym or you're doing anything. And Vince made you rise to your game. He made you get to the next level. Not only because he was always thinking 2 and 3 and 4 steps down the road, but look at the man. He is in such great condition, mentally and physically. And like we talked about influencers and aspiring to be like them, he is an influencer where you aspire to have the success and, health, obviously, of somebody of that stature. So what a great role model I was able to kind of work with for 8 years. And the tenure at WWE, 8 years is a long time. So I got to think about it as a time where we were just launching the WWE Network. We were launching pretty much opportunities with Fox, which was taking us to prime time at 8 o'clock Eastern on Fridays. It was a changing of the landscape for WWE. And I have to say, when we hit that with NXT, the WWE Network, Fox, it was a great 8 years of my life.
That's wonderful to hear. And actually, I was going to come to the WWE Network next. If you see the timeline, you just joined in time. WWE was preparing to launch the WWE Network, WrestleMania 30 being the first event. So what was it going into this? Because this is an era when streaming platforms weren't a thing. Not really a thing there. YouTube was on its peak, you can say.
You said it all just there. And the interesting part is I came in knowing I would learn about OTT, over the top platforms, very quickly because we were thrown into it. But that's a great example of the visionary that Vince McMahon had. Many people thought it would cannibalize our TV ratings because our TV ratings were number one, 18 to 34 in cable. We have the longest episodic television show in the history of TV. I think we're even ahead of The Simpsons. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. And everybody thought it would cannibalize. They were like, why would you go put content behind a firewall? Why would you take your pay-per-views off of a pay-per-view model, which was, $49.99, $50? It was a good model. A lot of people thought we were crazy. And I think the lesson there is when people think you're crazy, you're doing the exact right thing. Because as you saw, we were at the infancy stages. I think only Major League Baseball maybe had a platform similar to what we were doing. And we went out, we started to showcase the product, and you could see who the diehard fans were. And the opportunity to get all of that content for one price was a price people were willing to pay. And then from there, we evolved into creating that foundation of that training ground, that up and coming league, which was NXT. And all of a sudden you had something that was a little edgier, a little bit like the Attitude Era that people started to really gravitate to, because in this case, Triple H was the person behind it all and the visionary of understanding what needed to happen because he lived in the Attitude Era. So it was a really cool opportunity to bring on great content, be part of something that was groundbreaking in more ways than one. And then as you see the success matured, NXT found its way onto cable television. So that was a success. And then the WWE Network eventually became licensed to NBC Universal. So that became a success. So it just, again, goes back to the visionary that Vince McMahon was able to see, because not many people would take a chance to sort of break a model that worked really well, which was the pay-per-view model. People were willing to spend $50 to watch a pay-per-view. Here, he offered an opportunity for $9.99 for you to watch all of the pay-per-views, but also get all the content in between. So it was a great opportunity both for the fan and for WWE.
Absolutely. And, you know, he's truly a visionary. Even today, I think I was going through Twitter and, you know, there are a lot of people who complain that Peacock has a very, you know, confusing interface and bring back the WWE Network. So it just shows that 7 years, 8 years before time, this guy, you know, he brought in something, and his team brought in something that is so easy to navigate, and you can watch anything you want from Saturday night main event to, you know, all the legends like Vaughn Gagne and the AWA and stuff like that.
Yeah, the library, and that's the amazing part about WWE. They have such a treasure trove of library content. And I say every day, I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't say content is king. But when you look at the entertainment of WWE, the content is so rich and it goes back years. And the amount of times I would watch Roddy Piper, and I would go back and watch the icons of Paul Orndorff and Mr. Wonderful, right? Like those were great times where we talk about WWE hitting generations. And it's true. My father could go back and watch Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful and some of those amazing icons. I could go back, watch the Attitude Era. It's a generational feel. And you can't really say that about many other leagues or sports out there. It resonates with somebody and it always brings a smile to somebody. And to your point, the WWE Network was built really well. And that's what the fan base really enjoyed, was the opportunity to have all that content at their fingertips. And by doing that, it created an amazing platform that fans really did gravitate to.
Absolutely. And speaking of Vince, I think the Vince is a chapter that will never end. But this is one question I want to ask you. Vince McMahon recently retired at age 77, a great 40-year career. You know, he made territory wrestling a global phenomenon. So what do you have to say, you know?
I still think he's around. I don't think he's gone from WWE. I know he does not have the title of chairman, CEO any longer. But that was a life. That's his life. So I still think he's around. And I think he'll be around for many years to come, to be honest with you. And to be honest with you, there's a storyline that WWE is famous for, and you never know when that storyline might turn him back up into a major officer of the company again down the road. But it was his life. It still is his life. So I feel like he'll always be part of WWE. May not have that title, but I think you're going to see him again. And I still think he has some interesting mindsets behind the storylines as they continue. And it's obviously in great hands. His daughter, Stephanie McMahon, who's a tremendous person and a tremendous act and character in herself within the WWE storyline. Growing up since she was 8 years old, she used to come with me on presentations, and she would show a photo of her sitting on Andre the Giant's lap. And when you see an 8-year-old sitting on just such a large individual in the Andre the Giant, everybody just kind of sat back and just shook their heads because it's an iconic photo. It shows the strength of where Stephanie McMahon was able to grow through, doing all kinds of different things within the organization, and now obviously at the top. But I think Vince McMahon will live on. I think his pulse is still on the business, and I think this is a crucial time for everybody to work hard together to make sure that, we don't know what's going to happen with AEW or any other competitor that might want to come and try to grab some of the superstars and/or storylines. So we saw what he did with Ted Turner, and eventually he bought that entire library, which was available on the WWE Network.
Yes.
And we saw what that was all about. But I think he's still around. I think he still has some influence on the business as well.
The moment you said that he's around and he's going to come back, I just went back to the corporate ministry and all those times. And then he unveils himself as the higher power. It was me all along.
Yes.
It could possibly happen. He wrestled at 77. So anything is possible in WWE.
It is the truth. And again, the storyline is key, and no one does a storyline better than World Wrestling Entertainment.
Absolutely, that's right. And with Triple H taking control, he's putting so many Easter eggs. Like, you have to be on your toes if you're watching Monday Night Raw these days, because you don't know, something is happening in the background, or it's just so intriguing now. It just feels very fresh.
Yes, I think so. And I think you've got somebody who, what we talked about with him being part of NXT and sort of creating something out of nothing, he's got years of experience of being a superstar. And I think that makes a big difference. Being able to reflect back to his days of being a superstar and in one of the greatest tag teams probably ever to live, and being able to bring that information and that creativeness to today's landscape. Because you have to remember also, people are getting their content in so many different ways, and a lot of times it's very snackable content. They want it quick. They want it on their platform. So you have to distribute that across YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, etc., to make sure you're getting that fan, and getting that fan as the younger person as well.
Absolutely. And I think what Triple H has now is Shawn Michaels by his side. Shawn Michaels has a higher role in the company now. He recently got promoted. So did you have a chance working with Shawn Michaels for any NXT branding?
I didn't. I had done a couple deals from a talent perspective with him, and he was always a gentleman when I had advertisers around him. And I know that he was always coveted from a mindset perspective, because again, he's somewhat of a scholar of WWE, and I think he brings a tremendous value to that creativeness. And WWE has been known to be creative, and you got to be quick when you think about the storyline living 365 days a year, 5 days a week, or 7 days a week, and it's always on. It never turns off. So having somebody of that stature again, paralleled with Triple H, is only going to help the company.
Yep. Sometime back, you mentioned George the Animal Steele, and my ears instantly perked up, and I was like, okay, that means Rob has been a wrestling fan all his life. So am I on the right lines here?
Yeah, you are. So ironically, I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, which is the headquarters for WWE, but I never really thought I would actually work for them. But when I was 8 and 9 years old, I used to go to Madison Square Garden, and I was able to watch an Andre the Giant Hulk Hogan match. And it to this day, I can remember exactly where I was sitting. I can remember exactly what I thought. And then the moment I walked into the headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, it just all came full circle. So the opportunity to have worked with such an amazing company, to me, was just a childhood dream, because I remembered it when I was 8 and 9 years old, and I loved those characters. But I think it was more than that. It was the bonding that my father and I had, where we could bond over George the Animal Steele and his green tongue and him biting the turnbuckle. Like, that's the kind of thing that you can talk to your dad about and be like, do you remember when we watched that? So there's those moments, and I think that's what WWE is special for. It builds memories within generations and family. And even you and I, we smiled when we both were talking about George the Animal Steele. That's what, right? That's what WWE brings. And those are the characters when we talk about what Vince McMahon was able to do. he brings a smile and happiness to us because you and I can relate to a character like that. And I don't know if you can do that in baseball, football, or other areas as much as you can do that in wrestling. And you have to admit, whether you're a fan or not, that those superstars from back in the day and even to today's day make you kind of just smile when the minute you hear their song, their entry song, or you hear their name.
Absolutely. And, that's what it is. I think WWE, they have created a complete multiverse of sorts, and that is why Vince McMahon always, I think, considered Disney to be his competitor and not some other wrestling promotion.
Yeah, agreed. I think when you can now transition superstars into movies, you buy action figures, trading cards, apparel with the one of the most amazing things when I used to go to the events, and I went to a lot of the events, you could look around the crowd and see all the folks that were in that crowd. And I was at Dallas Stadium when we broke the record. I think it was 110,000 people for WrestleMania. And when you look around, when you look around, not one person is wearing the same shirt, but every person in that audience is wearing a WWE shirt, either from years ago, from present day. And you go to a baseball game or a football game and they're all wearing the same jersey. But that to me was the flooring moment when you can look around the arena and the person next to you and beside you are all wearing WWE apparel, but nobody looks the same. So to me, that's real fandom that doesn't happen in any other league.
Absolutely. Like I want to share this story. It happened with me last week. I was on vacation and, I was in a different state. I don't speak the language. And I was sitting in a cafe and I hear Randy Orton's theme song. Right. It's going off somewhere. And I was so restless. I couldn't just stop, myself. And then I found out that, okay, one of the person who is serving, his caller tune was the Randy Orton theme song. And, we bonded over that moment. It's like WWE, it just connects two people, even if you don't speak the language.
Yeah, and that's why Royal Rumble, to me, was always my favorite pay-per-view, because the minute you heard the iconic song come, you didn't have to see the superstar. You knew who was coming out. And that goes for the superstars of past and present. So theme songs were such a key part of WWE. And to that point, that's again why I love Royal Rumble, because you could sit back in your seat, you could close your eyes and just listen. And all of a sudden you heard the crowd go out on a roar.
Absolutely. And I think the most memorable, I think I screamed my throat out when Edge returned a couple of years ago. And then at WrestleMania 33, I think the Hardy Boys returned. That was insane for me because I grew up in the, late Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression era. So it was really, really special. And one more special moment at WrestleMania that we just brushed upon earlier was the Undertaker's streak that ended. So as a fan, what did you feel? Is like Brock Lesnar should have done that, or Roman was the right guy years later?
Yeah, I think it was the right time. And I still remember a certain person who was in the audience, and you could see his mouth drop and literally stay there for about a minute. People were floored. And when you think about storyline, it's hard to surprise the WWE fan, because the fan knows and thinks what's going to happen next. So when you're able to really surprise them, and I have to admit, that had to be the number one moment of surprise that everybody still talks about to this day. Nobody ever imagined the Undertaker would lose, lose in that pay-per-view. So that was a moment where you look to your left, you look to your right, and you were amazed, because we never thought it would happen, and never thought it would happen to somebody like the Undertaker.
Absolutely. I remember the outrage I had, because I blatantly stopped watching WWE. I said, I don't want to watch this. It's nothing. And then I find out from somebody that they screwed Daniel Bryan. And I was like, no, they can't do that to D-Bry. I came back to WWE. So even though I was gone, they found some way or another with another superstar to get me back.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you mentioned Daniel Bryan. He's an interesting case study, because as I had mentioned in the past, the storyline is really written a year in advance. They know what's going to happen. Of course, injuries and things like that could derail what happens. But Daniel Bryan was an interesting case study because he became the world champion mainly because social media started to back him. His stature wasn't big. He wasn't muscular. He didn't jump off the top. He didn't do things that were outrageously amazing. But social media became so behind him that the story writers had to change what was going to happen and maneuver him into the championship title bout. And that's a pretty cool part to say how generations have changed, that the people actually had a say in what was going to happen in the storyline.
People path, to say the least. John Laurinaitis will be happy that we've given him a shout out through this.
Yeah, agreed. That's funny.
And speaking of Daniel Bryan, I think he's that one underdog who defeated Drax the Destroyer and the Viper together. So it's really iconic from a WWE point of view. I just want to, come to SummerSlam and talk about this one moment where the very busy MrBeast actually caught up with John Cena. So how did that happen? Because he couldn't see him and this guy is very busy.
Yeah, again, the power of WWE, the WWE universe, and the opportunity to marry two people together at high levels of their game was something that we couldn't pass up. And there's interest there because you remember WWE brings a big audience, not to mention every talent that we bring forth. And obviously you see Logan Paul now being part of the program. There just was a great opportunity there to bring two together, and it worked from a timing perspective. To your point, John Cena's filming movies, how do you get everybody together? It was a perfect match and it just worked.
That's great, because I think from a gaming perspective, when WWE Superstars, we already have Xavier Woods and, Cesaro and all these guys who are into gaming as too much. But when you talk about the mainstream stars, when these guys come into that picture, it just changes the landscape completely.
Yeah, it does. But I think one of the bigger learnings was that these superstars are all gamers. I'm about to do something with, I guess I could probably tease it a little bit. I'm about to do something with Miro, who used to be Rusev, and CJ. So you'll see that happening shortly, but those are two iconic superstars that game and that are big gamers. So the opportunity to work with the two of them, for me now at GFuel, after watching them for so many years at WWE, is another example of just bringing back such great iconic superstars into the gaming universe, which is what GFuel does so well. But that's the underlining factor, is that a lot of these superstars were really big gamers as well. So it always made sense. And we built a platform called Up, Up, Down, Down for a little while, which was on YouTube. And we utilized Cesaro and Xavier Woods to do a lot of those programs. And that, again, just showed the power behind the interest of gaming and superstars.
Speaking to that point, like you had mentioned Dr.Disrespect, like, all of these gamers and, how much they've been intertwined with it. Yeah, he obviously had appeared in the pre-show as well, the two times. And seeing his build and all and his persona, you mentioned, how he's a character in himself. Was there ever any, speculation or something in the corridors of Stanford, like, we can make him a WWE superstar?
Yeah, there was, and that pre-show example was coming off. It might have been I think it was right after we did that YouTube program. So there was a hope and intention of trying to get him more involved in it. He's a perfect person for the WWE. He is a character. It just, from a timing perspective and where storyline went and his schedule, it didn't marry together and work. But there was always the intention to try to get him involved a lot more. One, because of his gaming background. Two, because of his character. And three, because of what we seeded with that program with GFuel. It really took off in the WWE universe. And again, the example of Daniel Bryan, seeing the chatter and understanding what's happening on socials, we really monitored the success of that campaign. And because of that success, we really figured out from the data we derived that Dr.Disrespect resonated really well with the WWE universe.
So if that was the case, like if Like if I'll throw up a situation now where suppose, he actually did come to WWE. Would the writers have had a superstar at that time in their mind to have a storyline with?
So you asked if he came to WWE, would there be a storyline behind him?
Yeah. Like how would it be?
Yeah, there would be. And it would be something like what you're probably seeing with Bad Bunny as an example, when Bad Bunny came on and he did a great job. I think you'd see it in a stint like that would last maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe at most, and sort of hit its peak at a pay-per-view and then kind of go away for then. I think that's what it would be, because again, Dr.Disrespect has his day-to-day job. I don't think he would be retiring from gaming anytime soon to become a full-time superstar, but we did see it in that sort of Bad Bunny example as being what it could have lived on through, but you never know, right? Never say no, because it could happen again down the road as Dr.Disrespect continues to mature as a gamer and a personality.
Yep,
yeah, absolutely.
Never say never in WWE.
Yeah, it's so true. You just don't know, and that's the greatest part. And you don't know who's going to show up. You don't know who's going to go into the Hall of Fame. You just don't know what's going to happen. And the Hall of Fame is another great example, and not a great moment, but when somebody charged the stage a couple of years ago when we were in New York for WrestleMania, you sometimes have to take a step back and say, was that part of the storyline? Because you just
I remember it was Bret Hart, I guess. The Hart Foundation was getting inducted.
Correct. And everybody was looking at each other wondering, was that part of storyline? Did that really happen? But that's the great part about WWE. You just don't know what's going to happen next. Unfortunately, that was not. What was that?
No, that was not staged. But for a moment, everybody thought that, because Travis Brown himself, Ronda Rousey's husband, also came in. And then people are like, okay, is this a way to get him in or something like that?
You're right. It was Ronda Rousey's husband who came into that too. You just don't know. And that's the good and the bad part. Unfortunately, that incident is not a good incident, and happily nobody got injured. But the great part about WWE is it just keeps you on the edge of your seat, because you just don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it happened, I think, a few months ago with Seth Rollins on Raw when a fan tried to attack him. And then a few weeks later, Brock Lesnar said that, I dare anyone to come close to me.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to mess with these folks. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're really big people. They're not small in any way. So and in my side life, I've become good friends with Mojo Rawley. If you remember Mojo, he was a great superstar back in the day. And they're all good people. And through the years, I've had the opportunity to meet Ronda Rousey, to work with Summer Rae and meet with Summer Rae before, and some just really good people. And everyone I've done work with and who worked with me from an advertiser or sponsorship perspective was always willing to go above and beyond. We did some great brand partnerships with Coca-Cola, with AT&T, with Mars, Snickers for many, many years. Snickers was my sponsor for 7 straight years of WrestleMania, and they got the opportunity to do some really cool content. So it's a great organization with some great characters and just great lineage. And that's, I think, what is the most important part, that it just got great history and continues to build history and put smiles on people's faces.
Absolutely. You're talking about Snickers. KFC just came into my mind, when Dolph Ziggler was dressed as the man himself and he came out and did the entire stick. So it was really...
That was Royal Rumble, right?
Yeah. So it's just so much fun. Then I still remember, I think it was Old Spice probably, and it was Rick Boogs who did that fun activity, and that was way before his debut. So when these brands collaborate, like Snickers is one of my favorite food items, but the first time I saw it, it was in WWE, on WWE television,
Yep.
So it's that much, And speaking of WWE and the partnerships, you mentioned Ronda Rousey. So she's someone who games. So have you ever, like, from a GFuel point of view, you've thought of roping this one in, because she's a massive name?
Yeah, she is a massive gamer, and you are correct. And we probably haven't pursued as closely as we possibly could, but she definitely is a huge gamer. And we talked to her a couple times just to be about doing some more gaming stuff while at WWE, but weren't able to pull it off. but she was great. There was an opportunity where she was working out in the WWE gym, and I had a chance to meet with her afterwards just to catch up. And she is an extremely intelligent gamer. So when talking to her and understanding what her passions are behind gaming, she speaks like a true gamer and just a competitor. I think anyone who can go from the UFC into WWE and really marry the two together, and then have sort of that iconic meaning behind Roddy Piper, where she took sort of that persona on, she was authentic. And I think that's a really good word to use for a superstar like her. She's authentic in gaming, but she was also authentic at WWE.
Absolutely. And I think she's more authentic than ever right now with her current run. She's like, all guns blazing. A few weeks ago, she attacked Adam Pearce. So that was insane. She's in her footing right now.
Yeah, she's definitely at the top of her game. And again, a testament to her for being able to adapt to the WWE, because it's not easy. She went from an area where she was performing for a little bit of time to doing a live audience multiple days during the week. And then, of course, she is a pro at World of Warcraft, which I believe is still her main game that she loves to play. But overall, just a great character, a great person. And I had a privilege to meet with her and actually take a picture, which was pretty cool for me.
That's great. She's a very big star, not just UFC, but she's also been into Hollywood. And the Hollywood film that she was a part of, she shared the screen with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, which brings me to my next question, that Arnold was there during your time in WWE to promote his film. So yes. How was that? Did you bring that to life, or what was the details behind it?
Yeah. So we worked with, I believe it was Paramount back in the day. And it was at WrestleMania in San Francisco in Santa Clara. I think it was 31. Does that make sense? That's right. And we had the Terminator, and we had everybody come out of the platform. It was an awesome entry. And that was really the first time we'd ever done sort of an entrance. We eventually did it again with Final Fantasy, with New Day, if you remember that one. That was in Orlando for WrestleMania. So that was a really groundbreaking opportunity that we were able to marry that together. And that was just a great relationship with the studio, with Paramount, and then a great opportunity to work with. In that case, we did very close creative work with Triple H to pull that one off. And by far, it looked really good. And we had Arnold do the opening graphic sort of to introduce WrestleMania. And that was something we also did with The Rock and Dave Bautista when we brought those guys back. So that entry into the pay-per-view is really what kicks off everything. So having Arnold's voice and his imagery in that was really pretty iconic as well.
Absolutely, it was a great entrance. I still remember, and an iconic match as well. You've got Sting on the other side, and NWO coming out. It was just complete mayhem,
And it was a long match, and I was there, so I have to tell you, it was really hot. So seeing Sting with makeup and what he had to go through, which was a really great match, that was a fun, and that was actually the first time that new stadium held an event like WrestleMania. So I know we broke records, within that Santa Clara, San Francisco area, but that was also a great stadium where the 49ers ended up playing.
Yes, if I'm not wrong, it was the Levi's Stadium.
It was Levi's, that is correct.
Yeah, and speaking of hot, Sting, actually the entire face paint just ran off by the end of the match. It was Steve Borden standing with the NWO in the end.
Yes, it was. Exactly. I remember that so well too. And you literally saw him with no makeup because it was running off. It was so hot. But that was a great entry into WrestleMania. And we tried to replicate that throughout the years. And the other one that I mentioned, which was Final Fantasy, where we brought in gaming to truly do that entrance with New Day. And it was pulled off really well.
Absolutely. And speaking of the gaming world, I know GFuel is positioned in a certain way in the market, but there's one certain WWE superstar who's also entered the energy drink space, and that is The Rock. So, with him coming in with Zoa Energy, what do you have to say in terms of being a competitor of sorts?
Yeah, it's I like to think we're winning, right? And I think that's really important. And it's all about shelf space. So I feel, and I won't say where, but I feel like we're winning on the shelf space when comparing us to Zoa. But it's a big market. I think energy drinks are just what everybody looks for when they go to their convenience store, their supermarket, or even online. And we've created a great brand identity. So when you think of GFuel, you definitely think the foundation of gaming, whether it be casual or serious gamers. And I think what happens with some of these other brands is you may lose their identity. And Zoa may be, outside of The Rock, I don't really know what it stands for and what it really is. So I am biased because of GFuel, but I'd say competition breeds the best in everybody. As we saw with AEW and WWE, it made WWE step up their game. And I like to think with Zoa, it just makes, you know, GFuel step up their game and continue being a leader in their vertical.
Absolutely. I think, and Dwayne Johnson, like The Rock, is unstoppable. He conquers WWE, and then he goes on to Hollywood. Then he's gone on to buy the XFL for, you know, for dirt cheap. Like he earned 22 million for Black Adam alone, and he bought the XFL for 15 million.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's going to launch, I think, next year. And I have a friend of mine that just went to work for them, and I'm excited to see what he can do with it. I think there's a place. I really think Vince McMahon had something amazing going with the XFL this last iteration. Unfortunately, COVID came into play, and that kind of sidetracked it and derailed it. But we'll see what happens. I know he's keeping a lot of the things that Vince created intact. So who knows? Maybe we see Vince McMahon show up at the XFL now.
Yeah. And it would be so poetic, because I remember The Rock was at the first XFL game when it happened back in 2001. And if Vince makes it next year, it would be very poetic.
Yes, it all comes full circle with World Wrestling Entertainment and the XFL. But it was great. And you talk about my tenure, but having a chance to be part of the XFL in that way also was pretty awesome too. We got a chance to talk a little bit of talk with that and see how it was produced from the ground up. And unfortunately, it obviously got derailed, but it'll be interesting to see what The Rock does. And, we talk about characters and building characters. There's not many Rocks around, I don't think, but what we always try to create was somebody who had great mic skills and somebody who had a great in-ring persona. And then when you marry the two together, you get a true superstar. And The Rock has that. It's the it factor that is so hard to breed, but you saw it every time with The Rock, and now he's the biggest movie star in the world.
Absolutely. And he's everywhere. He's in Fortnite also.
He is now. He's now in Fortnite. So when I was there, we were working with Epic Games to try to get a little bit more involved with their maps and their characters. And in this case, The Rock found his way in there. But we were working on it from an anniversary perspective last year to try to get it done. Didn't happen. But yeah, he's now in Fortnite, which is the biggest game in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a rumor floating around a few months back where, The Rock could be in a video game movie. There were a lot of rumors whether it could be Call of Duty or whether it could be Minecraft, not Minecraft, like Fortnite or those kind of movies. Is there something that the others don't?
I don't know that, but I wouldn't say it couldn't happen. I think there's always that opportunity to see that. We all know what the worth of an IP of a game is, like Call of Duty. So we'll see. I was able to work with Wargaming, which has World of Tanks. And I was able to work with Stone Cold Steve Austin on a program for that. And also get some imagery of the Undertaker and some other superstars onto the tanks in the game at that time. So that was kind of a fun integration between gaming and superstars, was bringing their iconic IPs and likenesses to one of the biggest games in the world. When you think of World of Tanks, it is a pretty big game. So that was a pretty fun opportunity to create while I was at WWE.
Yeah, that's quite impressive because, there's so much movement. And with The Rock, suddenly you see him, okay, he could be in a video game movie. And the gaming fans, really lost their mind because they're like, okay, which movie is it? Because he's a larger than life persona. So whichever gaming movie he would be in, people were just thinking, okay, it might be Call of Duty, it might be like that, because he fits the bill because of his Hollywood career as well. Yeah,
you definitely don't know. And with Microsoft potentially buying Activision, you never know what they might do with something like Call of Duty and making it a movie. And I think there's a lot of wealth still to be had within licensing the IPs, the intellectual property of these games, because people resonate with them, they play them, they understand them. To see them on the big screen with characters like The Rock, I think it's a home run.
Absolutely. And, as for someone whose main challenge was to ensure that sponsorship keeps flowing into the WWE, I just want to bring up, since you've seen so many pay-per-views, you've been in the back office for like so long, was there any pay-per-view which was particularly challenging for you? Because, social media is always a buzz, like, oh, the attendance numbers weren't that much and stuff like that. But from a sponsor perspective, was there any severe challenge?
I think sometimes when they were international, I think international ones, I know we did a bunch in Saudi Arabia and we did others. I think that was tough, mainly because of the time difference and when things were being filmed. So that was hard. But overall, the amazing part from a sponsorship perspective, WrestleMania had never been sponsored before Snickers came on board. So that was huge for me and to get involved. But we have one pretty much every month. So there was always an opportunity to try to find a sponsor and try to figure out what made sense. The big four, Survivor Series, Money in the Bank, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam, I would say are the most high profile events where the storylines really peaked. And that gave me the opportunity to truly showcase them to top advertisers. Then you had a few others that were sort of sprinkled throughout the year that were still very good, but didn't attract the same sort of numbers, both from a television perspective and a social perspective. But can't put anything past us. We trend every Monday, we trend every Friday, and every pay-per-view, we are the #1 trending thing on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much there for everyone to see on Twitter. They just pop up before the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
So how much of an effect does, certain matches play, in like acquiring sponsors? Because there have been quite a few times when, I think Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, they were in the main event of WrestleMania, I think in the last 7-8 WrestleManias, probably 4 times.
Yeah.
So does that also play a factor? Because the fans also, some of them see it like, oh, it's like, it's not that great or stuff like that. They are always vocal. So, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. The storyline definitely has something to be said about it. I think when you have a really good storyline, it just creates more attention to the show. It creates more attention socially and more chatter and conversation. And that's what sponsors are looking for. Specifically, I think whenever you can get as much buzz as possible, and always positive buzz, advertisers and sponsors want to be around it. But it does. I think when you have new talent and hot talent and talent that's very marketable, advertisers want to be around it. I think probably the best example is the women's empowerment. When we started to really empower female wrestlers or superstars, if you remember, they used to be called divas. So when we eventually changed divas to superstars, we empowered the female movement. And then you started to really see some really powerful female superstars come to the forefront, to the point where you eventually had Ric Flair's daughter in the main event at WrestleMania, which doesn't happen. So those are types of storylines that I think advertisers really like to be part of, and it's a feel-good moment. And those feel-good moments are always where advertisers like to take place.
For sure, yes. And, of course, you've, at the position you've held, you've worked with Vince McMahon, but you've also worked with, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Are there, some qualities that stand out for you, like, what makes them similar and what makes them the individuals that they are?
Yeah, I always loved the fact when I would sit in a room and Stephanie and I would present a presentation, whether to be to Levi's or Coca-Cola, and we would play off of one another in terms of the words that were being pitched on that presentation. And you could kind of see the sort of twinkle in her eye in a way where she knows it so well, and then she appreciates other people in the room knowing it so well. So there was that moment there that I really will never forget, because she and I connected so well. But I think the fact that she can be so great as a character on screen, and in many cases she was the villain on screen, and then be such a great person in real life and a great coworker. There was not a point in time where I couldn't approach her. She was very approachable. to the point where I could always ask her a question, or would she be interested in going to see Coca-Cola with me and actually speaking with the heads of Coca-Cola to talk a little bit more just about what's happening with WWE in a good way and where are we evolving as a company. So the approachable factor was pretty awesome for that. But I think the other part of it that's interesting, and this is both for Triple H and Stephanie, is as an employee, you always took your level up one more level to be as good as you could possibly be when you're in a room with them. They're extremely smart about the business, and it makes you become much smarter about the business and create a business acumen that is on their level. And I always appreciated that. There's an ability to rise to the occasion, and as characters in WWE as well as employees, they were able to do that. And as an employee myself, I took it on myself to get to that level.
That's wonderful to hear. I think nobody, like, they don't hear this side of Stephanie or Triple H very often. We've seen them for being the very villainous, authoritative figures on screen. But it's really great to know that, how they can keep two things at bay and be so good at it. When they're playing that character, they're making sure that you hate them, from the bottom of your heart. And here it's just completely opposite. So it's just wonderful. I think it's been a great session with you, Rob. Wonderful questions, wonderful answers. And I think we are still digesting all that you've given us. There's more, but I think for that, I will have to plug you in for a part 2.
Yes, I would love to. I have more. I'm super happy to speak a little bit more. It's such great conversation with the two of you, and there's so much more to be told, I think, in a world where you don't really get to peek under the hood too often. And I think this is an opportunity for both your fans and the two of you to hear a little bit more about what amazing things happen with such a great entertainment property.
Absolutely. And I'm going to leave you with a rapid fire. Okay. I'm going to put up these entity names, and you just have to give me one word, and that will be the closing segment. It's been a fun ride. I'm going to start with some interesting names. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. I'm going to start with The Undertaker.
Iconic.
Vince McMahon.
Legendary.
All right. Stephanie McMahon.
Brilliance.
Triple H.
Strategic.
Brock Lesnar.
Larger than life. 2 words.
Absolutely. He deserves that. He deserves that. Okay. Dr.Disrespect.
Talented.
All right. MrBeast.
Visionary.
Visionary. Okay. Seth Rollins has got some competition.
Yeah.
All right. Next is PewDiePie.
Great.
All right. And last but not the least, Ninja.
I want to say 2 words, but I can't say 2 words. Oh, wow. So hard. I would say from a Ninja perspective, talented again. I would use the word talented again because he's transformed gaming in a way that both transcends entertainment and gaming.
Yeah, and you can give me those 2 words. I think we can consider Ninja to be the Brock Lesnar of esports then.
Yeah, very much so. I think so. It's hard to just give one word for Brock because you're in awe when you see Brock Lesnar, and I've seen him, and he doesn't talk a lot in character, and you still look at him and you don't know what's going to happen next. And you don't know whether to go next to him. You don't know to go walk further away from him. He is that legendary character that is just larger than life.
Absolutely, he is. And I think Brock Lesnar and more such great legends are something that we want to talk to you about the next time we get in this. But for now, it's a goodbye from my end to you, Ishan Sawan. Thanks you from the bottom of my heart, because it's been a crazy one. I have interviewed the likes of Matt Hardy, I've interviewed Bianca Belair. I've interviewed Mickey James, but none compares it to this one. This has been my most favorite interview. And thank you so much, Rob, for giving me the time. And I am sure Sanket has a lot to say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been such a pleasure to have you here because you know, I know you talked a lot about, getting things to marry together and, having things in perfect sync. So WWE is so huge as a company that, it connects virtually every industry, so many sports and including gaming, there's a place for everyone. It's gaming and esports is like so similar and, seeing those two worlds collide and the insights you've given us, the knowledge that you shared, I think it's invaluable in today's time, because people really, are so inspired, they are so intrigued by such kind of stories. I think the ones you shared, I think you're living like once in a lifetime. Most people's dreams, I think you've pretty much nailed that down in that much time. So it's truly incredible. And we're so honored to have you, we were so glad to spend this time with you.
Thank you both for giving me the platform. It's been an amazing career in general for the people and the places I've been able to be, and the opportunity to share those with your viewers and your hundreds of millions of fans gives me a platform to truly express the gratitude I had with WWE for giving me the opportunity, for me working as hard as I possibly could to be the best I could over those 8 years. And now the opportunity to share it with both of you and all of your followers and friends.
It's great. It's so insightful. And actually, there are several things now that you talked about. It resonated because
that's exactly that's the takeaway that you should be taking, because it's true.
It's been a really informative, fun session. I don't know what to say. And like Vince McMahon is an idol to me. Like, that man, just the work ethic. And I'm very envious of the time you spent with him, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. It's something that will live on forever for me. And I just remember coming back and telling my mom and dad that he was in the gym, or I saw him in the elevator and he's like, "Oh my God, you look really good. Like, what are you doing?" Things like that, that you sort of pinch yourself and say, this guy is, he's as real as it comes. And it's pretty cool that he's saying what he's saying. So I lived a pretty amazing experience by having the opportunity to be with an icon like him. And like I said, he's someone like Steven Spielberg or George Lucas that created amazing characters that you and I are always going to be talking about forever.
Absolutely. That's the magic that Vince McMahon has created. And this was a terrific episode 1 of Essentially Wrestling with me, Ishan, and Sanket. We'll see you next time. And Rob is coming back very, very soon. Till then, have a safe one. Enjoy with your family and friends, and keep watching WWE and drink your GFuel.
That's awesome.